So imagine for a second that you are sitting down for your annual performance review.
Right.
For years, you have been like the absolute darling of the company.
Oh, yeah, always in the top 3, everyone loves you.
Exactly. Your reputation is practically bulletproof, and then your manager just slides this year's report across the desk.
And it is not good.
No, you haven't just slipped a little bit. You have plummeted from the very top of the class to barely making the top 20.
I mean, it is the kind of drop that gives you absolute whiplash.
Oh, totally.
You instantly start looking at the paperwork, wondering, like, did I do something horribly wrong over the last 12 months? Or did human resources completely change the way they are grading me?
And that jarring reality check is the exact situation Canada finds itself in right now on the world stage. We are looking at the brand new 2025 U.S. News Best Countries ranking. And the trajectory here is pretty wild.
It really is.
Because in 2023, Canada was ranked second in the entire world. In 2024, they were still holding strong at fourth. But this year,
Right.
Canada dropped all the way down to 19th place.
Which naturally causes a massive double take, especially when you look at who is sitting directly above them at number 18.
The United States.
Yep.
Which, depending on who you ask, is either a hilarious statistical anomaly or a very bitter pill to swallow. So today, we are pulling from detailed reporting by CTV News and Global News, along with the highly charged public commentary surrounding these reports.
There's a lot of commentary.
Oh, a ton. Our mission for this deep dive is to answer a fundamental question, really. Did Canada actually break down overnight, or did the world just change the ruler it uses to measure greatness? We need to separate the sensational headlines from the underlying mechanics of the data. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, so to understand a drop this severe, we really have to start by looking at that new ruler. Because if you just skim the headlines, you might assume you're looking at a nation in sudden catastrophic collapse.
Which is how a lot of people are reading it.
Exactly. But we are actually looking at a completely overhauled grading system. The entire methodology of the U.S. News ranking was basically torn down and rebuilt from the ground up for the 2025 report.
Wait, so how were they doing it before? Was the old system just based on general vibes and global popularity?
Essentially, yes.
Really?
Yeah. Previously, the rankings relied heavily on perception surveys. They would poll people globally and just ask for their impressions.
Huh.
So if people generally thought of a country as, friendly, beautiful, or welcoming, that country got a high score. It was a measure of soft power and brand reputation.
Wow, okay.
But this new system is incredibly rigid. They are now evaluating 100 countries using exactly 100 statistical indicators broken down into 8 broad categories.
So they aren't just asking people how they feel about a place anymore?
Not at all.
Yeah.
They are pulling hard data from international heavyweights like the United Nations and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. And the way the OECD gathers data is crucial here. They act almost like a global bookkeeping department.
Okay, how so?
Well, they take raw, highly specific data from different national governments, things like hospital beds per 1,000 people or specific tax burdens, and they standardize it.
Got it.
They strip away all the national spin so that a statistic in Canada can be compared apples to apples with a statistic in Germany or Japan.
It sounds like a school grading system changing overnight,
How do you mean?
Like moving from a classroom where you get an A for participation, having a great attitude, and generally being well-liked by the teacher, to suddenly sitting down for a strictly standardized, highly regulated math test.
That is exactly it.
Your charming personality doesn't earn you any extra credit anymore. And Eric Liedtke, the managing editor at U.S. News, gave a very revealing quote to CTV News about this. He said this shift is moving from reputation to reality.
Reputation to reality.
Yeah. He called it a national progress report and specifically warned people against comparing this year's rank to past years because the baseline has totally changed.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a monumental shift in how global success is quantified.
Definitely.
For decades, Canada possessed one of the strongest national brands on the planet. The polite, welcoming, peaceful neighbor to the north.
Right, the classic stereotype.
But under a purely data-driven methodology, a nation's historical brand no longer acts as a shield against its statistical realities.
But if having a universally loved brand or like a single flashy trait doesn't win the game anymore, how did Sweden and Denmark end up winning? They took the top spots along with Switzerland. What is their superpower if it isn't reputation?
Their superpower is relentless consistency.
Consistency.
Yeah. The countries at the top of the list this year didn't win by maxing out one specific category while completely ignoring the others. They won by having a remarkably solid baseline across all 100 indicators.
So no glaring weaknesses.
Exactly. They don't have massive structural deficits in their data. It is a mathematical reward for balance rather than a reward for a towering international profile.
Which is fascinating because this tension between an ideal profile and the everyday reality actually explains some of the most striking contradictions in Canada's specific grades this year.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when we look at the public services that citizens interact with daily. Take health, for example. Canada ranks 27th in the world.
Which usually shocks people, right?
Totally.
Given that Canada is globally famous for its universal healthcare system.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you look at the mechanics of the data, Canada actually scored a perfect 100 out of 100 on universal health coverage.
Right.
They also scored a 90 or higher on life expectancy.
Okay, I have to push back on how that math works, though.
Yeah.
How do you score a perfect 100 on coverage, absolutely ace the life expectancy metric, and still drop to 27th place overall in health?
Because the new model measures capacity just as harshly as it measures policy.
Oh, okay.
Canada's overall score plummeted due to severe systemic shortages in hospital beds per capita and physicians per capita.
It's like having a brand new 6-lane highway that suddenly merges into a single toll booth.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. The highway, the universal coverage, is technically free and open to everyone.
Yep.
But the single toll booth, the actual physical hospital beds and available doctors, creates a massive systemic traffic jam. The OECD data model is punishing the toll booth, not the highway.
Exactly.
Because does a perfect score in universal coverage actually matter to you as a citizen if the data shows that when you get sick, you are stuck in that traffic jam waiting for a bed?
And this raises an important question about what these metrics are truly evaluating. Like Hake emphasized that in the health category, they are heavily weighting access and availability, not just the theoretical coverage or the ultimate cost.
Right.
What this new ranking exposes is the statistical collision between institutional intent, the promise of free healthcare for all, and the operational reality on the ground.
The day-to-day experience.
Yeah. The end outcomes, like life expectancy, are really solid, but the day-to-day friction of accessing that care is dragging the national average way down.
And we see that same type of friction in the infrastructure category where Canada ranked 20th. They got a perfect score for electricity access.
Right. Everyone has power.
Every citizen can reliably turn the lights on. But their score was heavily penalized for a lack of renewable electricity. But why does a statistical model care where the power comes from as long as the citizen has reliable electricity?
Because modern infrastructure metrics aren't just looking at present-day convenience. They're evaluating future resilience.
Future resilience, okay.
Yeah. A high reliance on non-renewable energy makes a national grid statistically more vulnerable to global supply chain shocks, fluctuating fossil fuel markets, and future international climate regulations.
So they're checking the foundation.
Exactly. The model measures how future-proof that foundation is.
Which bleeds right into the governance category, where Canada ranked 18th. And governance is one of the most heavily weighted sections in this entire methodology.
It's massive.
Canada scored incredibly high on maintaining the rule of law and a lack of political violence. It is a fundamentally safe place.
Very safe.
But the overall score was dragged down by its tax system and some severe public trust issues regarding housing and everyday services.
Well, and those public trust metrics are a direct reflection of the economic realities citizens are facing. You really can't separate the governance score from the fact that Canada plays 18th in opportunity and 21st in economic development.
Let's drill into that because the economic data here tells a story about an affordability crisis that has completely shattered some long-held international stereotypes about the country.
It really has. The primary driver dragging down those economic and opportunity scores is the housing crisis.
Right.
And the data shows this is no longer just a localized problem for major hubs. Like a decade ago, if you couldn't afford to live in Toronto or Vancouver, you could just migrate to places like Ottawa, Montreal, or Halifax and find very accessible living standards.
But not anymore.
No. The current statistical outlook shows those housing pressures have radiated outward and spread nationwide.
The pressure on housing, the unemployment rate, the bottleneck at the healthcare toll booth, they are all part of the exact same ecosystem.
All connected.
And the sheer volume of demand on these systems is why the federal government is actually tightening immigration rules starting in 2026. The plan is to significantly reduce the intake of new permanent residents, international students, and temporary foreign workers.
It is a mathematical recalibration. The government is literally trying to alter the denominator in these per capita equations to relieve the pressure on housing and public services.
Wow.
And it shows how the definition of economic development has shifted in these global models. It isn't just about measuring raw gross domestic product anymore. It's about evaluating whether the average person can actually afford to participate in that economy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to look at the environment category.
Oh, this one is a shocker.
Because if you ask almost anyone on Earth to picture Canada, they picture pristine mountains, crystal clear lakes, and endless, lush forests.
Right. It is the ultimate nature documentary.
Exactly. So how does a country with that kind of geography rank 63rd in environment? It was their absolute weakest category across the board.
It is a wildly counterintuitive number until you look at the mechanics of the model.
Right.
63rd places Canada well into the bottom half of the global pack. And they did score highly for air quality and low light pollution, which you would expect.
Sure.
But the score totally tanked due to high carbon emissions per capita, a lack of urban green space, and low species richness.
I am genuinely stuck on that. How does the second largest country in the world by land mass fail on urban green space and species richness?
Because statistical models don't just look at a map and measure empty space.
Okay.
The environment metric in this ranking evaluates human activity. It measures how a society manages the spaces where people actually live and work.
Oh, I see.
The vast majority of Canada's population is heavily concentrated in urban sprawls near the southern border. If millions of people are living in concrete-heavy areas with high per capita carbon footprints and minimal integrated green spaces, the data model weighs that heavily.
So the empty space doesn't count.
Right. The millions of square miles of empty, pristine Arctic tundra don't offset the daily environmental reality of the populated zones.
Wow.
Furthermore, species richness isn't just counting total animals out in the wild. It measures the rate of biodiversity protection in areas impacted by industrial footprints and sustainable trade.
So it's a bit like judging a restaurant. You can't give the place a perfect score just because they have a massive, beautiful garden out back if the actual dining room where everyone sits is cramped, poorly ventilated, and wasteful.
That is a very accurate way to look at how the data weighs populated reality versus geographic potential.
It also completely reframes the comparison with the United States.
Absolutely.
The U.S. finished one spot ahead of Canada overall at number 18, which frustrated a lot of people. But when you look at the American scorecard, it isn't consistent at all. It is wildly uneven.
Highly volatile. The U.S. ranked number 1 globally in culture and tourism and number 2 in economic development.
Right.
Those are massive, heavily weighted categories driven by sheer economic scale and global media influence. But they ranked 33rd in health and an abysmal 72nd in natural environment.
So the U.S. gets dragged down by massive blind spots in health and environment, but they get violently pulled up by this overwhelming economic and cultural gravity. Whereas Canada doesn't have those extreme highs to pull its average up. It just has those systemic bottlenecks in healthcare access, environment, and housing that anchor it in the middle of the pack.
And when a purely data-driven model exposes those systemic bottlenecks and contradicts a country's very proud national self-image, the public reaction tends to be incredibly volatile.
Looking at the comments on these CTV and global news articles is wild. And just as a quick timeout for you listening, we aren't taking political sides here.
Right, absolutely not.
We are just looking at this commentary as a sociological mirror. We're impartial here. But the anger on both sides of the political spectrum is intense, and the way they interpret this exact same set of data is fascinating.
It is a perfect case study in how statistics are absorbed by the public. On one side, you have the right-leaning or anti-government reactions.
Yeah.
This group is furious about the state of the country, but they also feel entirely vindicated by this drop in the rankings.
Right. They are pointing directly at the current Liberal government. They specifically name Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, blaming them for what they describe as a decade of total mismanagement. They are taking the data on housing costs, the pressures on the healthcare toll booth, and the economic strain, and blaming it on high taxation and what they call open arms immigration policies. For this group, dropping from 4th to 19th isn't a methodology quirk. It is hard proof of a lived reality they feel they've been warning people about for years.
But then you analyze the left-leaning or more skeptical reactions in those same comment sections, and they are completely dismissing the ranking.
Completely throwing it out.
Yeah, they view the entire report as biased American propaganda. Their argument centers heavily on that comparison to the United States.
Right.
They ask, how can a country like the U.S., which is struggling with severe political division, systemic gun violence, and has a convicted felon as a political leader, possibly be ranked as a better country than Canada?
They point right back to the governance metrics where Canada scored highly. The relative safety, the lack of political violence, the stability.
Exactly.
For them, any statistical model that places the U.S. above Canada is fundamentally flawed, so they just throw the whole report out. Which makes me wonder, if a statistical ranking triggers this much intense partisan debate, is it actually measuring the state of the country? Or is it just poking at existing political bruises?
What's fascinating here is how it demonstrates that data is almost never consumed neutrally.
So true.
Both sides of the political aisle looked at the exact same list of 100 statistical indicators. And both sides immediately weaponized the ranking to confirm their pre-existing worldviews.
Wow.
One side says this proves our government is failing. The other side says this proves the American methodology is a joke.
Right.
But the underlying mechanisms, the physical lack of hospital beds, the raw cost of housing per square foot, the per capita carbon emissions in urban centers, those numbers remain static regardless of the political narrative wrapped around them.
So what does this all mean? We started by asking if Canada fundamentally broke overnight or if the ruler changed.
The ruler definitely changed.
Right, and the reality is that the new ruler is just exposing the friction that was already there. Canada's drop to 19th isn't a sudden catastrophic failure. It is the result of shifting from a global popularity contest built on vibes to a highly focused magnifying glass built on hard data.
And that magnifying glass exposes the widening gap between a brilliant historical reputation and the tangible everyday realities of the people living there.
Yeah.
It is the friction between the promise of universal health care and the reality of a doctor shortage. The promise of a booming economy versus the mathematical reality of crippling housing costs. The postcard image of pristine nature versus the statistical reality of urban environmental management.
It is a reminder to always look past the headline. Being ranked 19th doesn't mean a country is terrible, just like being ranked second didn't mean it was flawless. You have to look at the underlying mechanisms to see the real story, which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder on your own.
Yes.
Think back to that performance review analogy we started with. If you are handed the clipboard and tasked with designing the ultimate metric for the best country in the world, how would you build the model? Would you give the most weight to overarching societal ideals, things like multiculturalism, national safety, and the promise of universal coverage? Or would you heavily weight the daily tangible frictions, like how easily a citizen can find an affordable home, skip the traffic jam to see a doctor, and secure a well-paying job? Which of those two scorecards truly captures what makes a country great?